Belisi, talking about the vocabulary list in Unit 11. Okay. I'm not going to go through every word. We're just going to go through some highlights. And the first one is the verb akuo, which it has a funny principal parts. Okay, it has a deponent future, akusamai. I don't know if we talked about these, did we? Well, yes, I think we did.
Briefly, and just the fact that they were
that they exist. Okay. The rest of the verb is normal, but it's only deponent in the future, and the meanings of it are interesting. Okay. The book tells you plus the accusative of the thing heard and the genitive of the person heard. So this is I heard a noise from, or I heard a speech from Bill. Okay. So the thing that you hear and the person who's saying it, the thing goes in the accusative, and the person making the noise goes in the genitive case. That's a kind of interesting notion. You can also say, I heard of you in Greek, okay, just like you can in English, which is a kind of partitive genitive. It means I heard something of you, right? It's a piece as opposed to the whole, okay? If you say I heard you, then that would be in the accusative case. But if I heard of you, a little bit of you, then put them in the genitive. So we have those kinds of distinctions. And then there's this funny use of it in the passive. This verb doesn't really have a middle except in the future. And when it's passive, when it has middle endings, it's almost always passive. Okay. Notice that it doesn't have a perfect passive form. Okay. But you have passive, aorist passive, and the present and the imperfect can be passive forms. Okay.
Yep.
And you also have a future passive. So that means to be heard of. Okay. To be spoken of rather. Okay. So you can say he was spoken of, and just as you can in English, it's an interesting and common use of this verb in the passive voice. Okay. This lesson finally gives us some other verbs, okay, that have second aorists, and it has three of them. The verb ballo, which is an interesting verb in itself, with two lambdas in the present system, but only one everywhere else. We've seen this, remember, with the verb angelo. You're off the screen, Belisi, again.
Oh, no.
Angelo, that has two lambdas in the present and the imperfect, but one everywhere else. So there's the principal parts, ballo and below. It's got a contract future, as Belisi had done. That's an epsilon contract. Ebalon, bebleka, eblemai, and eblethein are the other principal parts. The cool thing about this verb, among other things, is that it means two things. Ballo means to hit and to throw. Okay. The general opinion is that the fundamental meaning is throw and that hit is the secondary one, but they're both there. And the best explanation that I know of this is that it's a matter of a grammatical category called proxemics, which proxemics has to do with the Latin word of what's near and what's far. So in some languages you actually distinguish between whether you're close to or distant from an action. And so if in the process of throwing something you're far away, it's throwing.
Right.
If you're up nearby, it's hitting somebody with something, at least in theory. Interesting explanation. Okay? But notice it's a second aorist, ebalon, that we get, right? Which is like elipon. There's a new one. All right. The second aorist verb has a form that's weird and interesting as well. This is the verb lambano. You'll notice that these are very common basic notions. You're off the screen again, please. Lambano, which means to take, okay? And lambano, lepsamai, elabon. Okay, second aorist, elabon. You can tell these are second aorists because there's no SA, right? And it has the endings of the imperfect, just to remind you. Elabon. Elefa is the perfect form. EI has a weird diphthong with an eta, not an epsilon iota. Okay, elefa, because the original, there's the...
The other way around.
All right, yep.
Okay.
Okay, so it's epsilon iota, lambda eta, and then fa, elefa. And so you've aspirated it, and you have a weird EI, instead of a reduplication, an EI on it. And then ele mai, with two U's, is the perfect middle or passive, and a leifthane with again the leif root with an eta. Nope, not an EI, but an eta in the stem. Epsilon.
Again.
Yep.
I want it to be.
So you can see the leif. See, there's a consistency. The leif root gives you leipsamai and elefa, elemai, and a leifthane. Lambda eta phi. The one that's weird is lambano. Okay, the present form is formed on the basis of the aorist. So there are a bunch of verbs like this which have what's called a nasal infix. The mu there, the original root is lab and lab, and so you get the mu in the present and an ano suffix. But everywhere else the root is lab or lab. Okay, so you see the leif in leipsamai and lab in the aorist. Okay, and leipsamai and elephon and leifthane. So it means take. All right, the third verb with the second aorist. Right?
And just remember this.
Yes. Okay, we want to remember this about it. This is one of the verbs that has the accent. You can say.
Just that in the imperative, the second aorist imperative, it has accent here.
On the second, on the last syllable, which is a rarity in Greek. Okay. Yep. All right, and the third one is the verb to suffer. Okay. Pascho. You get the English word paschal, like in paschal lamb. Okay. From this. And so it means suffer. The future, get a load of this, is pesamai, EI, so pesamai. I'll explain these in a second. And then the aorist. The second aorist is epathon, and then pepe, pepontha, right? Exactly, good.
It's taxing my memory.
Yeah, there you go. Pepe smai, you got an accent there. Pepe smai, and I think that's it. There's no way else to pass it. Yeah. No, but there isn't any Pepe smai. Forget about it. That's wrong.
Just kidding.
Yeah, forget that. There is no. So you just
no 5 or 6.
No 5 or 6. So the reason that there's no 5 or 6 is important. Okay. Notice this is a verb with a middle future, pesamai. Okay. As well as the second aorist. Okay. If we look at the fourth principal part, pepontha, okay, we've got a reduplication, and the implication is that the root of this verb in the perfect is ponth, okay, which should vary with penth, P-E-N-T-H. Can you write that over there? Penth. And it turns out there's a root noun, penthos, okay. You may have heard of this character Pentheus in the Bacchae of Euripides. Anyway, it means suffering or sorrow. It's the older word for, we learned pathos, okay, but penthos is the root noun from this verbal root penth. And that's what gives you, actually, pasco comes from punth, no vowel, sko, okay, P-N-T-H, and the suffix sk, or sko, okay, that you get, originally it's a kappa, but because of the theta, it becomes a chi, okay. Penthsko gives you pasco. Penthsamai gives you pesamai, okay? So it comes from the root penth. Epathon is again from E-P-N-T-H. The root of the aorist is P-N-T-H, and the N there turns into an alpha, right? Just like the N of unlikely comes out as Greek alpha, amoral, and all those things. Remember we talked about this before? And so this is all the same root, although it looks very different. But it means, here's what it means. It means to have something done to you, okay? In other words, the basic notion of it is passiveness, okay? So you can't have a separate passive thing of a verb that means, whose meaning is fundamentally passive, right? So that's why there's no perfect middle passive and there's no aorist passive. But it can take an agent. So you can say, I suffered at the hands of somebody, right?
Yep.
And then you're going to use hupa in the genitive for the person at whose hands you suffered. Okay?
Even though the form is active.
Even though the form is active. Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said. Okay. Let's see. What other things are in this lesson? There are a couple of nouns here that are important. There's the noun gunai, gunaikos, the word for woman that we talked about, which means woman or wife. Just like aner means man, male person, in other words, or husband. There's the noun eros with an omega, or eros, erotos. I don't think we've seen any nouns with that suffix, but it's just a genitive erotos. And the forms are what you would expect from that ending. The dative plural is erosi, from erotsi. But the book translates it love, which is a common translation, but it's a mistake. You're out of the picture, Belisi.
Sorry.
Yep. So it means desire, okay? Rather than something romantic like love, okay? And I think it's very important to understand that in Greek and in general, okay? But it's not the English word love. Another important noun in this lesson is the one we mentioned in class today briefly, kalos, with two lambdas. The S-stem noun that's derived from the adjective kalos, kale, kalon, which means beauty. Kalos, kalus, okay, is the genitive, and it's neuter, da, okay? And it means beauty, yep. Accent on the first syllable, yep. So it means beauty. We also get the noun kerux, kerukos. Actually, the cognates of this word have to do with, can also mean a poet in some Indo-European traditions. Because a herald, okay, this word means herald, okay, at least that's the standard translation. What it means actually is a person who's physically sacred, okay? You cannot harm him, even if he's the herald of your enemy, okay? There's a story about I think it's a Spartans and Athenians thing. I think the Spartans sent the Athenians a herald, and they threw him into a well, and he drowned. And the curse of the Athenians was that all the males, their penises fell off.
Oh, yeah. That's terrible. Don't kill the messenger.
You can't hurt heralds. Disasters happen because of it. So anyhow, so it's a sacred person, and sometimes kerukes are ambassadors. Okay, we have the same notion that preserved in our notion of what an ambassador is. The word for the thing that Hermes carries, which in Latin is caduceus, in Greek is kerukeon. So Hermes is a kerus. Okay, he's a person who goes between opposing camps, right, and who's sacred. All right, we get names for numbers which are indeclinable. The word for 7, hepta. The word for 8, octo. We don't get the word for 9, but we'll get that later on. We also get some more interrogative, the interrogative adverb bos, which is interrogative. Remember, we had pata in Unit 10. This is the equivalent. There's pata means when, and just as with an accent, it's an interrogative that introduces a question. So pos means how, when it's at the beginning of a sentence and has an accent. When it doesn't, when it's enclitic, okay, and has no accent, it means somehow. And just likewise, pata means when, question mark. You can put a question mark after the how, okay? Because when it means when, question mark, it has an accent. When it means at some point, or some when, there is no some when in English, it means at some time, okay, then it has no accent, right? It's an indefinite. So those are useful words that come up a lot in Greek. And then you get the adverb tate, that means then, again in the same family of these time words and interrogative words. And let's see, here's a famous Greek word that we get along with eros. We have hubris, okay, which is a noun like polis, hubris, hubraos, or polis, palaos. It translates it insolence, okay. A lot of people It's
feminine.
All the is nouns are feminine.
That's
Yep.
right.
Sorry. So the book translates it insolence, but what it really means is behavior that's naturally that's out of kilter from the point of view of the way it usually is. Okay, that's and something has gone haywire in somebody's behavior. It's hubris. It doesn't mean arrogance or insolence. So plants can have hubris, and in which case they stop doing what they should be doing. They should be producing flowers and fruit, but they produce only flowers, and the flowers drop off. Things like that. So it's a much more complex and interesting concept than arrogance or behavior that's weird. So in Athenian law, here's another thing, that in Athenian law, hubris means assault and battery. So when you beat up your fellow citizen, okay, in Athens, that's hubris. It's you've gone nuts, okay, when you do harm to your own citizens from the Athenian point of view. So you can see how this notion can get into something like arrogance, but that's not the underlying idea. All right. I think that's about it in terms of things that are particularly interesting or peculiar about the words in this lesson. Okay? I'll follow that.